Carrie wasn't invited, was she? Came for leftovers? People around laughed at the line from Rose, the wife of the eldest son, Mile. The unpleasant laughter echoed. This is my house, you know. At those moments, you're like, huh? Rose looked at me with a stunned expression. People who interpret certain information to suit themselves need to be careful. Because of that, some people end up ruining themselves. Just like Rose this time. I'm Carrie Smith, just turned 60 this year. Though I'm old enough to be a grandmother, I run a small import wholesale business with my husband Tom, who's the same age as me. It's not a big company, but it makes a decent profit. Our only son, Mike, was once all set to take over the business, but one day he changed his mind. I want a career in design, Mom. I can't follow in your footsteps. We were a bit disappointed, but there was no reason for us to object. After we retire, we can hand the business over to another employee or even close it with our generation. Seeing Mike, eyes shining, talking about his dreams, we wholeheartedly supported him. True to his words, Mike studied design and landed a job at a small to medium-sized design company. There, he met his colleague Rose, and they married this year when he turned 30. Rose is 25, 5 years younger than Mike. With her well-done makeup and model-like slim, long limbs, she was a sight to behold. At their wedding, I was so taken by her beauty that I blurted out, Rose, you're so beautiful. You look like a model or an actress. To this, Rose smiled happily and replied, I get that a lot. You definitely have the grandmother vibe, Carrie. Oh, I mean in a good way. Honestly, I was offended. Sure, I'm a grandmother, but did she really need to say it to my face? And that too, my son's wife to her mother-in-law. The whole mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict is complicated enough. Grandmother, huh? Sorry, I meant it as a compliment. As a mother-in-law, showing any malice could easily be seen as harassing my son's wife, which I wanted to avoid. I want to avoid unnecessary conflict. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts are already delicate. Just this time. I told myself this to get through it, but after meeting Rose a few times post-marriage, I was convinced her seemingly innocuous comments were actually just mean-spirited. Rose always wanted to be on top, and as her mother-in-law, I was no exception. Every time we met, she tried to one-up me. I prefer using good things for a long time. It's partly to save money, but I also like how things become familiar over time. But to Rose, this just seemed miserly. Carrie's things are all so old-fashioned. Didn't you say you have been using the same bag for 10 years? Amazing! Rose deliberately picked up my bag and clothes hanging on the wall, showing them off mockingly. Yes, I take good care of them so they last a long time. Isn't there a limit? Oh, do you want some of my hand-me-downs? They're old designs, but you'd be fine with them, Carrie. Her voice and face laughing as if it was all fun, were completely mocking me. I couldn't help but wonder why Mike married this girl. Internally fuming with anger, I tried to find something good about Rose. The conclusion I reached was that she only had her looks going for her, which made me doubt Mike's taste in women. Moreover, whenever we dined together, Rose always pushed the food I disliked onto my plate. Here, I'll give you these bitter bell peppers. Enjoy! She'd say, dumping a load onto my plate without my consent. When I reluctantly finished it all, Rose's eyes would widen with laughter. Oh, Carrie, you're eating too much! I was stunned. After making someone eat leftovers and then saying something like that, what a predicament. Eventually, she even joked, It's so convenient having Carrie around. I thought Mike was foolish for choosing such a wife. Initially, Mike seemed happy in the first couple of months of marriage, but within half a year, he looked drained. He started coming over to our house alone once a week. It was as if he was seeking refuge from Rose. It was clear that things weren't going well between Mike and Rose. As proof, whenever Mike came to our house, he often complained.
Rose wants to quit her job. She's already been skiving off a lot. I'm left dealing with all the complaints.
Rose had originally wanted to quit working after getting married, but Mike was uneasy about relying on his income alone.
I'd prefer if you continued working.
Huh? Really? Rose agreed, though it seemed she wasn't happy about it. Whether it was spite towards Mike or just a lack of motivation, it was unclear, but her neglect of work was evident.
It's your wife, man. Do something about it.
When mistakes were made, naturally the other employees had to take responsibility, and the anger was directed at Mike.
Now I'm labeled as the idiot who judged a book by its cover and got tricked by a pretty face. Great. Just great.
Mike lamented every time he visited. Things are tough, but there's good news for you, Mike. That thing we talked about, it'll be ready in 2 weeks.
Really?
This was the reason Mike had been visiting our house so frequently lately. His only solace was something that would be ready in 2 weeks.
I was so excited I even bragged about it to a friend over the phone.
Though his married life seemed tough, seeing Mike laugh like that made me smile too. One day, Tom and I were at the furniture store a little far away. As we browsed and exchanged opinions, a familiar voice echoed through the store. What? After all I've bought, no discount? That's ridiculous! With a sinking feeling, I looked towards the voice and saw Rose yelling at a salesperson. I wanted to pretend I didn't know her, but the salesperson being yelled at by Rose looked so scared, even from a distance. I couldn't ignore it. Tom and I decided to approach Rose. Apparently, she was in the middle of haggling with the salesperson, angry because the discount wasn't as much as she expected. They don't usually do discounts here. We can't cover it all, but we can contribute a little. With that, the salesperson was promptly released. Rose, anticipating us paying, was in an exceptionally good mood. Perhaps that's why. I wondered why Rose was talking about needing furniture soon. I'm in a hurry because I need furniture soon. Mike and his wife's apartment should have already been fully furnished with furniture and appliances, mostly purchased when they got married, and not old by any means. So why the sudden need? Noticing my puzzled look, Rose eagerly shared. We're actually building a new house soon. A new house? Yes, hasn't Mike told you? Unfortunately, I hadn't heard anything about this from Mike. Well, I don't know that. Rose seemed to relish this revelation, smirking smugly. Oh, should I not have mentioned it? But it's weird he didn't tell you, right? His own parents. It seemed Rose couldn't stop her insinuating smile, as if suggesting that Mike and I weren't close. You sure your relationship with your son is okay? Be careful not to get disowned. There was a gleam in Rose's eyes. I planned to ask Mike about the new house, but forgot as a month went by. Mike, maybe busy, hadn't come to our house recently. He used to come over so often.
Well, as long as he's healthy, that's what matters.
Tom and I were saying. This, when Mike called a few days later. I took the opportunity to ask him about what Rose had said. Mike, are you building a new house?
Huh? No, I'm not.
But Rose seemed so happy talking about it. Mike sounded puzzled, but said he'd investigate and hung up.
I'll look into it.
A few days later, while cleaning the house, Mike called again.
I found everything. It's going to be interesting. Let's go together. I'm coming to pick you up now.
Interesting. I had no idea what he meant, but Tom had left early for errands, so I was free for the day. I'm free, so why not? I went with Mike as he suggested. We arrived in a residential area about 30 minutes from our house. Stepping out of the car, I was captivated by the house in front of me.
Come on, Mom.
Mike beckoned me and we entered the house. There was a noisy crowd and chatter coming from the living room. Mike quietly opened the door connecting the living room and the hallway. Inside, there were about 10 men and women, probably in their 30s. They stirred upon noticing us. Then Rose appeared, cutting through the commotion. "Oh, what's this? Carrie? Is that you?" Rose approached me laughing. Rose seemed a bit tipsy, the smell of alcohol on her breath. Whispering in my ear, Mike said,
Today they're having a housewarming party.
Then, with a high-pitched voice, Rose chimed in. "Yes, we invited everyone from the office." Clearly, she was eavesdropping. According to Mike, all the men and women in their 30s were his and Rose's colleagues. Rose, looking around with enjoyment, came closer to me again. "Carrie wasn't invited. Did you come for leftovers?" The people around laughed at Rose's remark. The mocking laughter resonated. "You like that, don't you? The person who eats leftovers?" The laughter grew louder. "Oh no, Rose told me, but Mike's mom is too needy." One of the colleagues said this and Rose replied, "Right, too much." Rose and her colleagues were of the same ilk, none of them calling her out. I don't really understand anything, but for now, not quite understanding but determined, I raised my voice slightly more than usual and said, "This is my house, you know." "What?" The living room suddenly went silent. Rose and the others froze, while Mike alone had a mischievous smile. Carrie, what are you saying? Just because you're jealous?" "It's not like that. This house, I built it." "What?" Rose looked confused. Just then, Tom appeared at the living room door.
What's going on? Why is it so quiet?
Before I could explain, Rose shouted at Tom. "Tom, tell her! Carrie is saying this is her house." Tom, slightly taken aback by Rose clinging to him, said,
Well, this is Carrie's house.
This unexpected response seemed to panic Rose. "What? But—"
A surprise party for Carrie, right? No?
Tom looked confused. At this point, Mike burst out laughing.
Ha! It's all a misunderstanding by Rose. This is definitely Mom's house.
Rose, grabbing Mike's clothes, stammered. "But I heard you on the phone, saying your dream castle is almost ready and you can't wait." Then it dawned on me. I opened the living room curtains, pointing to the corner of the yard. "Rose, you're mistaken. This isn't Mike's dream castle or your new house. His dream castle is that." What I pointed to in the corner of the yard was a compact living space, a container house. "What?"
Exactly. That's my dream castle.
Mike nodded, satisfied. Yes, what Mike was looking forward to was the compact living space, the container house. "No way! A lie!" "It's no lie. This is my house, and yours, rather Mike's house, is over there." I repeated calmly, and Rose stood there shocked. "A lie! That shack is my new house?" Apparently, Rose had misunderstood on her own. I was amazed at her audacity. She mistook Mike for building a new house and first probed Tom about it. Tom likely gave her the new house's location and keys without a second thought, assuming family trust. Then, seeing the house, she got carried away and hosted a housewarming party to show off, unaware of Mike's actual new build being a container house. All that bragging about a new house, and it's that? Rose, didn't you say a man's house is a symbol? So Mike is like a container house kind of guy? Laughter leaked again from the crowd. Whispers and scoffing turned Rose's face bright red. "What is that? You're joking! Mike, you tricked me!"
I didn't trick you. You eavesdropped and misunderstood.
Rose's face grew even redder and she shouted loudly, "What kind of castle is that? Such a tiny old shack!"
To Rose, it might be an old shack, but to me, it's heaven.
After marrying Rose, Mike felt like he was always being watched. That's why the container house, where no one would bother him, was so attractive to him. Listening to Mike's explanation, Rose showed her anger. "That's ridiculous. Who can live in that? I can't. Absolutely no way."
You don't have to, Rose.
Mike said this and pulled out a paper from his bag, handing it to Rose. Her face drained of color upon seeing it. "What's this?"
As you see, divorce papers.
Why? Why such a thing? Mike sighed deeply and looked at Rose coldly.
I knew about Rose's affair, and that everyone laughed at me for being fooled by a pretty face.
Unknown to me, Rose had been cheating since the beginning of their marriage, frequently returning home in the morning under the guise of work, though the overtime wasn't that much. Mike had found it strange. Then one night, coming back from work, he saw Rose arm in arm with a strange man. That's when he decided and hired a detective.
The evidence came together easily. Quite a shock.
Mike looked around the room. The murmuring voices ceased and the room fell eerily silent. But
If you're going to pretend you don't know, look at this too.
Mike handed over a photo of Rose cozying up with her affair partner. Some tried to peek at Rose's hand out of curiosity, and she hurriedly hid it. This is...
If you're still not convinced, I have more explicit, direct evidence photos.
Rose turned pale and shook her head vigorously.
The reason I kept quiet was just to gather evidence like this. I've got it all now. No way out for you, and I won't budge on the divorce or the compensation in the court.
Rose's face was ashen, tears in her eyes, trembling. That's terrible! Divorce? Compensation in court? No, absolutely not! As she cried and clung to Mike, the crowd began to stir again, unable to hold back their laughter at Rose's downfall. What are you laughing at? You're all the same. Why is it only me going through this? Rose screamed in near hysteria, but it was just her way of venting stress. How pitiful. I wouldn't want to end up like that. I agree. I could never speak to my mother-in-law like that. Rose is just too out of touch. As Rose knelt down and hung her head, her colleagues looked down on her. First they laughed along, but now they've quickly turned their backs on her. I didn't have much sympathy for Rose, but I did feel a bit sorry for her. Then some people rushed over to Mike, patting him on the shoulder.
You had it tough, man.
Rose is cute, but cheating? That's a no-go. On to the next one. Everyone acted as if nothing had happened. Mike seemed to be responding with a smile, but there was no laughter in his eyes.
How can you talk so casually? You're so thick-skinned. I admire it.
Mike's provocative tone stiffened the face of a male colleague who had his hand on Mike's shoulder.
Mike, what are you saying? Just take your heavy hand off me.
As Mike brushed off the hand, the colleague raised his voice angrily.
What the heck? I was just laughing. You're so petty. You're not even popular at work and you're slow.
No one defended Mike. They were all trying to calm the man down. Then Mike dropped another bombshell.
Oh, really? Well, don't worry, I'm quitting this month. What?
I reacted the most. Why, Mike?
I don't want to see Rose's face. I don't like this workplace that just gossips about others. I'm thinking of changing jobs.
Mike had been looking for another job for a while. Luckily, impressed by his portfolio and track record, surprisingly, it was the largest company in the industry.
I may be changing jobs, but it's still the same industry. We might cross paths again as business partners, but if you guys are the representatives, I won't deal with you."
Mike's gaze swept the room. He spoke as if lecturing each person.
"You should be more cautious about blindly following and joining in on uncertain information, whether it's true or not."
A few who met Mike's eyes awkwardly looked away.
"I know you've been talking behind my back, calling me the guy who got cheated on."
Mike clearly took the lead in the conversation. Some apologized sincerely, but Mike's stance didn't change.
"No matter how much you apologize, I won't forgive you. I can't trust you and don't want to trouble my new company with strange people."
Some looked as if it was the end of the world. The living room felt like a funeral. Some women, including Rose, sparkled their eyes. What? He got scouted by that company? So elite. But they quieted down under Mike's glare. This should have been a resolution, but it wasn't that simple. Even though it was newly built, by the time I arrived, there were a lot of other people relaxing there, as if it were someone else's home. Even though I finally built my own home after managing the money with Tom, just an apology couldn't settle this. I will have everyone compensate for the house cleaning. It needs a thorough cleaning. Honestly, I'd want it rebuilt if I could. Surprisingly, no one objected to my angry declaration. Later, Mike and Rose ended up divorcing through their lawyers. Rose must have really hated the idea of divorce, or perhaps she was loath to lose her status as the wife of a man in the top company, because she persisted quite a bit. She even went so far as to say, "This time you can cheat if you want," in an attempt to reconcile. But when Mike threatened to sue her if she continued to be persistent, she finally agreed to the divorce. However, Rose still tried to contact him after the divorce. Though not as desperate as before, her overly ingratiating voice on the phone exasperated Mike. Eventually, Mike bluntly told her,
"Why not make use of that flattering voice? You could earn a living day and night with it. You can do it. Cover your appearance with your voice. Aim for a lump sum payment in the divorce compensation."
After the passionate speech, it seemed Rose finally stopped contacting him. As for me, I'm now living with Mike and Tom, the three of us. Mike has completely fallen for his container house, and Tom is enjoying gardening. I'm happy to have my own long-desired study. By the way, I reconfirmed with Mike if he really had no intention of taking over the company. He immediately answered,
"No."
Thankfully, the business is doing well, so Tom and I are planning to hand it over to a trusted employee. This decision motivated the employee even more, bringing various ideas to the table for the company. That's a happy development. The future of the company looks bright. Our new house got a bit dirty, but after a perfect house cleaning, we're planning to settle down and enjoy it slowly as our final residence.
Having to breathe the same air as an uneducated idiot in the morning is going to ruin my job for the rest of the day. Every day, the other employees and I had to put up with the abuse of an elite chief who had graduated from a prestigious university. One day, when I couldn't put up with her anymore and countered, she said, "You should notify your bosses or something. I am one of the elite. Nobody's going to listen to a dropout like you." The chief looked completely victorious. However, one word from the president who passed by changed her attitude completely. "Hello, my name is Daniel Smith. I got a job as a sales at a subsidiary of a certain company right after graduating from high school. My father was injured in a traffic accident with a motorcycle and could no longer work properly, so I worked after high school instead of going to college. I got a job at this company through my father's introduction to support my family instead of my father. This company's employees got along well with each other, and it was a pleasure to work there. My boss is nice and my colleagues are easy to get along with, so I don't have to worry too much about work. However, I'm feeling a little down today." "Hey Smith, isn't the meeting you're having today with the head office?" "Yeah, it is." "Seriously? Then that person must be coming here, right?" I should have taken the payday off. You don't deal with her directly, so don't say anything about it. I'm more depressed in the morning. Because that person, said the colleague, when the colleague was about to continue the conversation. Hey, why were no employees at the entrance? They were expecting me, and this is how they reacted? According to the colleague, see, best of luck, Smith. Oh, hey! The colleague muttered something and then dashed away from there. You'll remember that traitor. The owner of the voice glared at me, getting left behind. There is really only a bunch of unkind people in this place. It annoys me that I have to go out of my way to speak with these people. Please accept my apologies. I wasn't expecting you to arrive so early. She is the manager Jones, who travels from the headquarters on a regular basis for meetings, etc. She graduated from prestigious university, and as such, she was hired as a mid-career executive candidate. On the other hand, she was arrogant and made fun of the subsidiary's employees. Whatever, they are all, as usual, uneducated and inept. You make even me look like an idiot. I need to get out of here as soon as possible, so please begin the meeting. Could you please wait a little longer until one more person in charge arrives? He's already on his way. What? You're going to keep me waiting? First and foremost, aren't you supposed to be ready to start as soon as arrive from the headquarters? You are all completely incapable. I'm so sorry. You arrived 20 minutes earlier than expected, but you are unreasonable. I want to talk back to her, but the person I was speaking with was from the head office, and she was an elite recognized by the head office. I'm not sure what the company will do if I go against her. We complained to each other at the subsidiary company, but in the end, we never oppose them and always endure. I was working as usual. Then one morning, as I was driving to work as usual, I noticed an elderly lady crouching down distressfully in the middle of the road. It should have been an emergency, but the people around me didn't want to get involved or didn't know what to do, so they pretended not to notice her and walked past her. Are you okay, Granny? I dashed over to her and called out, but the old lady was not responding because her breathing was labored and she was unable to speak properly. I'm going to call an ambulance right away. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. We all went to the hospital together when the ambulance arrived. It's okay to go home, the nurse said. We'll take care of it over here until her family arrives. I had already informed the company that I will be late, and I was concerned about the grandmother, so I stayed with her until her family arrived. Fortunately, she was not in danger, and she could leave the hospital after a few days. We were overjoyed. A few weeks later, suddenly, I got a transfer order to our branch office of the headquarters. It was a direct order from the president of the headquarters. I was debating whether I should go to the main office, but my colleague said, "It's proof that your effort has been noticed. Go ahead and give it your all." They encouraged me, and I decided to transfer. My first day at the headquarters was hectic. First, I decided to greet each department individually. On my way there, I found the chief's bag in the corridor and hurried up to greet her, but she noticed me and gave me a disgusted look. "What are you doing here, you moron? Aren't you a little out of place?" "Good morning, Chief. I've been assigned here." "Oh, you're being relocated here? What exactly are they thinking?" The chief ignored my greeting and swore at me. "Having to breathe the same air as an uneducated idiot in the morning is going to ruin my entire day at work." "Chief, I'm sorry for making you feel that way." "Oh, please stop talking. Please do not approach me. I'm busy. Keep out of my way." Chief is in a bad mood today, and she wouldn't let me finish what I was saying. She waved her hand around as if attempting to flick off the swarming flies. Trying to continue the conversation at this point would be pointless. I gave up and returned to work. When I returned to the floor where the chief was, I overheard her cursing her subordinate. You are inept. Why can't you do something as simple as this? This is something that even a new employee could do. I'm sorry, says the employee. The employee's error was discovered and she is very upset about it. The employee who is being yelled at tightens his fist, bows his head, and endures. If this is the case, it will be far preferable to have another employee work for me rather than you. You are no longer useful to me. Get your desk cleaned up and out of my way. After saying these words to the employee, she turned to face me and our eyes met. She had already looked unhappy, but she twisted her face even more and glared at me. What? You got back? Didn't I tell you to stay out of my way this morning? Please relax, Chief. I have something to tell you today. Stop talking. Everyone is arrogant. I don't have time for stupid, incompetent people like you. The chief left the floor and slammed the door as hard as she could. I talked to the employee who had just been yelled at by the chief, frowning at the sound of the door closing violently. Is that chief's typical attitude? I asked. According to the employee, it's not just common, it's something that happens every day. She constantly disrespects me, that woman. In frustration, the employee raised his voice. Quiet, the chief will hear you. If the chief hears him, she must say something bad to him. I did everything I could to calm him down. I've been enduring this for a long time, but I can't take it anymore, the employee said. The employee stumbled towards his desk and pulled a white envelope from a drawer. Don't tell me this is a resignation letter, I said. According to the employee, yes, it's something I've been considering for a while. My previous workplace was more peaceful and each day was fulfilling and enjoyable, but since the chief has arrived, this place has changed into hell. He rubbed his desk sadly. On his desk, there were numerous documents and notes. He must have liked his job and worked tirelessly. I understand how you feel, but don't you feel frustrated that all of your hard work has been squandered by only a chief? Of course, it's aggravating. I'm aware of how hard I've worked here. I've been at this job longer than she has, and I've done my best. But this is... I can feel his frustration and sadness, which is nowhere for it to go. Chief says thinking like that, but there must be employees who trust and rely on you. Why don't you stay a little longer for those people? Even if you just say a little more. Don't worry, I'll handle it. It is not you who should quit. What? What exactly do you mean? I went to the chief, leaving the questioning employee behind. We cannot have any more employees who are mistreated like him. That is why I have come here. I quickly followed the chief and found her in the break room drinking tea. Chief, may I? I asked. The chief noticed me and looked broken-hearted. Are you still here? You're as persistent as a fly. I'm taking a break. Please leave me. The chief looked tired, possibly because she had just raised her voice. I pushed myself to say to her, Chief, I will conduct a thorough investigation into your harsh words and actions towards our employees. You may be subjected to appropriate measures based on the results. My abrupt words stunned the chief. What are you talking about? Have you started playing hero to cover for that incompetence? No, I'm not. Why don't you go tell your bosses about it? I am an elite. You should know that I have the support of my superiors. Nobody will listen to drop out like you from the subsidiary. The chief exudes triumph and laughs hysterically. Then out of nowhere, a man appeared from the other side. Smith, it's you. How are things going for you? It was the president. I'm trying to do my best, thanks to you. Hello, President. What a happy coincidence that you've come. What happened to the grumpy chief from a while ago? She pretends an excellent chief to those people who are in higher position than herself. Haha, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Have you established rapport with the new branch manager? What about the new branch manager? The chief is befuddled and stares blankly. It is Smith standing right in front of you. What? Have you not been briefed? This inept employee from a subsidiary company? You are a great jokester, boss. The chief laughs. The president, on the other hand, regarded the chief with suspicion. What are you talking about? Are you sure? I'm not making any jokes. You understand. He is now the branch manager of this branch office. Don't be so impolite as to label him incompetent. What the hell? The chief made a drawn face at me. I couldn't tell you because you ignored me earlier. I have informed the rest of the department. Oh no, such an illiterate incompetent. The chief's face had turned blue and she appeared to be about to collapse. When he sees such a chief, the president reluctantly opened his mouth. Let me tell you something about this fantastic opportunity. This was his father's business. He was unable to work properly after being injured in a car accident, so I took charge. Is he the former president's son? That's correct. I've been trying to convince him to relocate to the headquarters, but he's so stubborn that he didn't come. I apologize. I liked that place and I was satisfied. So what brought you here unexpectedly? Why didn't you just keep working at the subsidiary? The chief was out of her mind and forgot she was in front of the president and barked at me. The president, who had only seen the best of the chief, was unlikely to recognize this type of chief. He was taken aback while he is opening his eyes so widely. I made a strong request of him. He is my mother's lifesaver. Benefactor? What about the president's mother? Yes, the elderly lady I rescued a few weeks ago was the president's mother. When the president rushed in from the hospital entrance while I was waiting for the family, I was taken aback. I heard that he was the only one who went to see her first and called an ambulance, even though others pretended not to notice her and passed by. I didn't want him to be buried in such a subsidiary. So you personally appointed this guy as a branch manager? The president nodded and said, That's correct. I wondered if I was qualified to be the branch manager on the day I was appointed. I had been working for a subsidiary, then I was suddenly asked to lead a branch manager of the head office. Then, after hearing from the president, my father called and asked me to support the company he had built, and I made up my mind. That's why I've given him the position of branch manager going forward. Don't be disrespectful any longer and pay close attention to what Smith says. The president said sternly to the chief before leaving the room. That's the reason, chief. I'm back in front of the chief again. You are mistreating not only your subsidiaries, but also your direct subordinates. I understand the frustration and sadness of being mocked because I am a low-educated incompetent. No. Now that I'm the branch manager and have witnessed this situation, I can't ignore it, so please be prepared. No. The chief sat down on the spot and began to weep because her elite pride severely wounded. It's no surprise. The person she had always looked down on because of less educated than her was suddenly in a higher position than she is, and she told me she was going to get rid of. Thus ended my difficult days. The next day, a detailed fact-finding investigation of the chief was conducted. As a result of interviewing several employees and subsidiaries who had had relations with her, a number of terrible comments and actions were reported. The punishment was disciplinary grounds. Upon receiving the news, the chief left the company as if she has no soul without talking back. Chief looked very depressed. She had high self-esteem, so I guess it's understandable. By the way, are you sure you want me to replace Chief? Oh, I felt I could trust you. The chief was fired, and in that vacant slot, he appointed him who had been yelled by her. He had been with the company for many years and was enthusiastic about his work. Of course, I had also checked out his past work performance, and he experienced the frustration and anger of being abused by former Chief Jones. I knew he would not do the same thing she did and would be a good boss who could understand the feelings of his employees. And as for me, I tried to do my job from the same perspective as the employees without being confined to the position of branch manager, referring to a subsidiary with which I was in good relations before. I interviewed each employee on a regular basis and asked for their opinions. I also held study sessions for employees in higher positions on how to lead and tried to deal with employees as much as possible. Thanks to these efforts, the atmosphere of the company gradually improved, and it became a good place to work, reminding me of the subsidiary where I used to work. Well, Smith, I'm sorry about Jones, but thanks to you, this company is doing very well. Oh, I'm afraid. At a later date, I was called into the president's office for coffee. He wanted to talk to me about recent workplace. I am getting old. Eventually, I'd like Smith to succeed me. Ha ha ha. With all due respect, Mr. President, I don't see myself becoming president. What? Why do you refuse? Your father would want the same thing. I want to be on the same side as the employees, supporting this company together from the same perspective, and being involved with the customers. It will be very difficult to do that once I become president, won't it? The president scowled at my words and then laughed. Ha ha ha, you really are a funny guy. Normally, you would be happy to accept the offer. Am I an eccentric? No, that's fine. That's exactly the kind of Smith I'm looking for. The president tapped me on the shoulder a little harder. You have a meeting soon, don't you? Go work hard.
I've kept him in this house for 10 years. He's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law openly hostile, believing my husband's lies. My husband himself has changed from the man I once loved into a selfish monster. Is this his true nature? At this point, I don't even care. Enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck dealing with your bad attitude. My name is Clara, a 37-year-old working at a local bakery. I've been with my husband, Albert, since high school. His family has a long line of carpenters, and he joined the family business right after graduating. We got married at 24, and we're just an ordinary, happy couple. That all changed when we were 27.
Clara, the hospital just called. Please come quickly.
A frantic call from my usually composed mother-in-law at work. I rushed to the hospital and found my husband staring blankly ahead. He looked defeated, and my mother-in-law sobbing beside him. Clara, I can't move my legs anymore. At that moment, he broke down crying. I realized our lives would never be the same. Apparently, my husband went to the grocery store to buy drinks during his lunch break. My husband was waiting at a traffic light when a car hit him. His spine was damaged, paralyzing him from the waist down. After a long hospital stay, my husband came home, a completely different person compared to before the accident. We were living in a rental apartment, but then my usually quiet and craftsman-like father-in-law said, "You should live with us." And before my husband returned, he made his home accessible for us. We were financially unstable, so we gratefully accepted. "I'm home." He entered the house in a wheelchair, his voice devoid of energy. He used to be cheerful, loud, and always cracking jokes. Now, he was like a stranger. "Clara, is Travis doing well?"
Daddy, does he hurt?
Our 2-year-old son, Travis, was worried. Travis loves spending time with his dad, especially going down the slide at the park. Whenever his dad has a day off, they head to the park and slide until Travis gets tired. Seeing his dad after a long time, Travis couldn't contain his excitement. He tugged at his dad's hand as if to say, "Let's go play over there." But his dad looked sad. Before the accident, he would have easily stood up, put Travis on his shoulders, and spun around. Now he can't do that for Travis ever again. His dad is still recovering both physically and emotionally. Just then, mother-in-law shouted, "Travis, your dad can't walk anymore. Go away." My mother-in-law suddenly yelled at Travis. Travis, only 2 years old, couldn't understand and burst into tears. Mother-in-law looked annoyed. Mother-in-law is noisy about such a son. I was looking at him with a face that said something like that. Mother-in-law has been more irritable. She's probably struggling to accept the situation. "Travis, big boys don't cry. Come on, let's play with Grandpa," father-in-law said, lifting Travis up. Travis smiled instantly. Father-in-law is usually quiet around us, but he adores his grandson Travis. For a moment, I saw a smile on father-in-law's face. During my husband's hospital stay, I was summoned by my in-laws. "So, Clara, what are you planning to do? You're not thinking of leaving Albert, are you?" Mother-in-law asked, a bit agitated. Father-in-law signaled her to stop. I wondered, do they think that I'm heartless? Their words stung a little. My feelings for my husband haven't changed, and Travis loves his dad too. We'll get through this as a family. "Thank you for your concern. I plan to stay by my husband," I assured them. They seemed grateful. I've read many books to prepare myself, but I've come to realize that good intentions alone aren't enough. Since coming home, my husband has become quite demanding. "That's not it. Come on, get it right," he'd snap, increasingly frustrated. He even threw a book at me once. "You don't understand how I feel." A phrase I've heard too many times. Seeing his changed behavior, Travis started saying,
Daddy is scary.
My son started saying things like that. However, in front of the helpers and friends who've come to visit him, he is a bright husband like before. "Well, I guess I'll just take it easy from now on," he'd joke, and I felt a sense of nostalgia. "Hey, Clara, come here." When my husband calls me in that urgent tone, it's usually about his bathroom needs. I was busy feeding Travis and couldn't leave. "I'm sorry, mother-in-law, I can't step away right now. Could you please help Albert?" Even if I say something like that, it'll be awkward for him if I go, right? I'll take over making dinner for Travis. That's what she said, but my mother-in-law hardly took care of my husband. She seemed to chat with him while I was at work, but that was about it. Seeing this, my father-in-law sighed. "I'll go. Clara, sorry for always troubling you." He's gruff, but father-in-law is kind. He's also very proactive about helping my husband. When my husband first came home, he'd ask me, "What are you doing right now? What book is that?" He even helped me study. My mother-in-law didn't like that. "Clara, why don't you quit your job? Albert is in such a condition, you should support him properly." That's what she said. I knew what mother-in-law was getting at. Basically, when father-in-law and I are at work, stay-at-home mother-in-law has to take care of my husband, and she doesn't like it. Even though we mostly have a caregiver for that now. He's her own son. What's her deal? Plus, Travis is going to grow up. My husband can't work properly anymore, but we still need money. "So, mother-in-law, could you please help out more? Father-in-law is helping me study, you know? We're family." Mother-in-law sighed at me. "Don't you dare make a move on my husband." She glared at me. What? Is she insane? My husband is still selfish, and mother-in-law says ridiculous things. I've thought about taking Travis and leaving many times. But my parents are taking care of my elderly grandmother at home. I couldn't think of going back there, and I didn't have the courage to live alone with my son. "Clara, you've aged." Time flies, and it's been 10 years since my husband had his accident. I'm still working at the bakery. I'm now 37, and Travis is in 6th grade. These past 10 years, my mind has been filled with concerns for my husband and child. No wonder I've aged. Hey, how rude. We're still in our 30s, you know. Sorry. Maybe my husband has come to accept his condition after 10 years. He's started talking to me cheerfully again. While I'm at work, father-in-law, who's now retired, looks after him. As for mother-in-law, she's uncooperative as ever. And lately, for some reason, she's started ignoring me. But I can't think of why she'd treat me like this. Recently, my husband found a new hobby. He started playing basketball at a nearby gym with people in similar situations about 3 times a month. It seems to be a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful to the friend who introduced him to it. "Travis, you want to come too? Basketball is fun." When I tried to talk to our son Travis, he brushed me off saying, "I'm more into baseball, you know." Our relationship had grown distant. Travis, who once adored his dad, now saw him mostly as an angry figure. My husband didn't think he was the problem. "Isn't he a bit young to be in his rebellious phase?" he'd joke, leaving me with no choice but to sigh. Out of the blue, I got a call from my mom back home. "Hello, Mom, it's been a while." What? My elderly grandmother had passed away. She had been suffering from dementia and had been in a care facility for years. She caught a cold, which turned into pneumonia. I was told she looked peaceful when she passed, surrounded by family. That gave me some comfort. Only Travis and I attended the funeral. My parents live in the next town over, a good drive away. My husband stayed with his parents, so Travis and I took the opportunity to visit my family home. Seeing my parents again, they had aged significantly. Well, I guess I've aged too, I thought.
How's Albert doing? Are you getting along with his parents?
My mom asked, looking concerned. I felt like crying just looking at her. Meanwhile, Travis was happily playing video games with his cousins. I hadn't seen him smile like that in a long time. "Well, his dad's fine, his mom not so much," I said, forcing a smile. My parents reassured me.
You can always come back home.
Knowing I had a place to return to made me feel stronger. Coming back from a quick grocery run, I find my son standing in front of my husband's room. "What are you up to?" I'm about to ask, but he puts his finger to his lips, signaling me to be quiet. Inside, I hear my mother-in-law's angry voice and my husband trying to calm her down. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but I can't help but listen, and what I hear is shocking.
"Hey, Clara, when are you getting back home? Get back here now."
A few days later, my husband calls, clearly frustrated that my son and I haven't returned. After overhearing that conversation between my husband and his mom, we left his parents' house immediately. We went straight back to my parents' house. When I told them what happened, they welcomed us with open arms, though visibly concerned. "I'm not going back there. I'm a burden, right? I'll give you the divorce you want." My husband snaps.
"What are you talking about? Just come back. We need to talk."
He hangs up abruptly. My parents, who were listening nearby, look worried. My dad stands up and says, "Let's go." We leave my son Travis with relatives and head back to my in-laws' house. Travis, sensing the tension, tells me, "Mom, don't back down." I'm touched by his courage. They better be ready for me. "We're back." Hearing this, my irate mother-in-law storms out to greet us. "What's the meaning of this?" "Oh, Clara's parents. What brings you here today?" I sense her irritation despite her polite tone. "We're here to discuss Clara and Albert's divorce," my dad says, visibly angry. In the living room, my husband is sitting in a wheelchair, clearly surprised by my parents' sudden appearance. He glares at me as if to say, "How dare you bring your parents?" He always does this when he's unhappy, just glares at me. His mom does the same. Lately, he's been staring at me like he's watching me, wondering what he doesn't like. They're like two peas in a pod.
Do you always glare at Clara like that?
My mom asks, also angry. In this tense atmosphere, only my father-in-law remains calm. "A few days ago, the police came to our house. They said we were mistreating our daughter-in-law. They left after a brief talk. Do you know anything about this, Clara?" "Yes, I was the one who called the police," I reply calmly. Upon hearing this, my husband and mother-in-law explode in anger. "See, it's all her fault. She's crazy. You should divorce her." If anyone's crazy, it's you two. My husband is nodding in agreement next to me. But father-in-law is different. "Clara, there must be a reason. Speak up." He says this in a gentle voice. "A few days ago, I came back here. Albert and the others didn't seem to notice, but what I heard was so horrifying. I realized I can't live with them anymore." Father-in-law wasn't home at the time. He looked puzzled, but these two are different. Their faces have turned pale. Do they recognize themselves? "What are you talking about? Are you okay?" My husband looks at me with a smug face, probably thinking I have no evidence. But my son Travis was quite vigilant. "Do you want to see a video?" Travis recorded this. I play a video. In it, my husband claims that I've been having an affair for years. After that, I'm plotting to take over the house. He says he's told me multiple times he wants a divorce so he can remarry someone he met through basketball. Mother-in-law is furious after hearing this. "Divorce her immediately. She's even flirting with your father. I won't forgive her this time." But mother-in-law wants to keep Travis as the heir. The balcony on the second floor. The floor is old, about to give way. Can't we use that to get rid of Clara? Mother-in-law grins as she says this. That's going too far. But if she gets injured, maybe she'll understand how I feel. That's what they said. The video ends and I quietly put away my phone. Of course, I've never had an affair, and this is the first I've heard that my husband has met someone through basketball. I felt my life was in danger, so I reported to the police. That's all there is to it. But the police only said they'd listen to my story. My husband and mother-in-law are silent, their faces pale. Father-in-law looks angrier than ever. What is this? Are you both idiots? I thought I was the fool. Thank you, father-in-law, for always being there. I genuinely felt that way. Despite all this, mother-in-law starts talking nonsense about how parents should let their children be with the ones they truly love. Realizing that staying here would be pointless, my son and I start to pack up to leave. Can you believe her? After letting her stay in our home for 10 years, she's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law glared at me as she usually did and said that. In response, my dad said, I've heard a lot about you from my daughter, but this is the first time I've talked to someone and been so uncomfortable. In response, my dad calmly said, my mother-in-law kept muttering, but wouldn't stop bad-mouthing me. Fed up, I finally snapped, enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck with your miserable life, you nasty woman. I left their house with my parents. After that, my husband and I got divorced. Some people who didn't know the full story called me a heartless wife, but I told the truth to my close friends. Word seemed to spread among my ex-husband's friends, and now hardly anyone visits him. I don't know if that's the reason, but after a while, my ex-husband and his mother started reaching out. I never picked up the phone. When they realized I wasn't answering, they started sending a barrage of messages, all strangely pleading for reconciliation. Funny enough, all the messages were about wanting to get back together. Didn't he say he found someone better? Reading his words like, I took you for granted. Now that you're gone, I realize your worth. I thought, realizing it now? Too little, too late. I told my ex-husband, if you keep contacting me unnecessarily, I'll go to the police. And after that, the messages stopped cold. I moved back to my parents' home in the next town over and opened a bakery in a nearby vacant shop. The only employees are me and my parents. My son Travis helps out with cleaning the shop now and then. Travis started middle school this spring and seems to have made a lot of new friends. He's also fully committed to his baseball club activities. Though the bakery was just a hobby at first, thankfully it's gaining a good reputation and we're getting more new customers lately. Welcome. Oh, it's you, father-in-law. My former father-in-law visits the shop a few times a month to buy bread. From what I heard, his son's feelings were one-sided. He was so persistent that he even got banned from playing basketball, which he used to enjoy. Honestly, serves him right. My former father-in-law had said he'd take care of his son. I don't care about you. Do as you please. But he coldly told my former mother-in-law. That seemed to have shaken her, and now she's actively taking care of her son, which made me chuckle. There are some financial worries, but with my parents' support, we're managing. I'm home. Oh, Grandpa's here. Play catch with me. You've grown again, haven't you, Travis? Your grandpa used to be the ace of his middle school baseball team. Bring it on. Watching their heartwarming conversation, I strongly vowed to make the most of my new life together with my precious family.
Sick? Why don't you just stay in the hospital forever, then? Over the phone, my husband uttered these cruel words. His reaction, which I never expected, made my voice tremble. What are you saying? I don't need a sick wife. In fact, I've been doing you a favor by being with you all this time. You should be grateful. My husband left me alone with my illness and went off on a trip with his lover. In that moment, the trust I had built up in my husband came crashing down, all at once. I can't believe it. Leaving his sick wife to go on a romantic getaway. Enough is enough. I will show no mercy. Now I will seek revenge, by any means necessary. My name is Lizette, and I'm 28 years old. I've been married to my husband Hervey for 2 years now. We met at the cafe where I used to work. He was a regular customer who approached me, and our relationship blossomed from there. After dating for about a year, we got married without a hitch. I lost my parents when I was in 9th grade. All that was left for my family's house and the inheritance from my father, who was a businessman. Thanks to that inheritance, I was able to go to college. I owe everything I have now to my parents, and I'm grateful. But losing both parents at once left me with wounds in my heart that are immeasurable. I was always afraid that someone I loved might suddenly disappear from my life. I fell into this groundless anxiety, and there were times when I even started to distrust people. During my relationship with Hervey, I expressed my fears many times. He was the one who accepted me with all my insecurities. When he proposed, he said, "I will never leave you, Lizette, and I'll always protect you. So please marry me." But I don't have a family. I will become your family. Huh? I'll be with you as your family for the rest of our lives. I won't let you feel lonely anymore. Hervey. I believed in his words and decided to get married. After getting married, we moved into the house where I had lived with my parents. Having lived alone for so long, married life with him was so bright and happy. It was dazzling. After we got married, he didn't work late, and he came straight home every day. It became normal to eat dinner together, and before bedtime, we would slowly watch a movie together. Those were joyful days. However, about a year after we got married, my husband's overtime work suddenly began to increase. Though his overtime had been almost zero, it gradually increased to 1 or 2 days a week, and before I knew it, most of the week was filled with overtime. 2 months later, business trips were added, and our time as a couple drastically decreased. Dinner became a daily routine that I ate alone. At first, I endured it, but unable to bear the sudden change in our lives, I decided to open up to my husband. "Hey, Hervey, don't you think you've been working late too much lately?" Sorry about that. Work's been piling up recently." "But you hardly worked late even a few months ago. And then there's that business trip the other day." "I'm working hard for you, Lizette. To hear you say that, it's honestly a shock." "I'm sorry." Frightened by my husband's intimidating tone, I apologized on the spur of the moment. Then he immediately returned to his usual demeanor and smiled, saying, "As long as you understand." Do I really have to endure this? For the sake of our married life, Hervey is working hard every day. I probably should have been more suspicious, but at that time, I didn't have the courage. To me, who had lost my family, Hervey was my only family left. I didn't want to lose my precious family ever again. Because of these feelings, I couldn't confront him any further. Several months later, on this day, Hervey came home in a state of inebriation like never before. Despite my welcoming, "You're home!" he didn't respond at all, went straight to the bed, and fell asleep, still in his suit. Why? He said he was working late today. An indescribable anxiety overwhelms me. Why is he drunk? Wasn't he supposed to be working late? What has he really been doing all this time? And where? I had so many questions I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to damage our relationship, so I had been turning a blind eye, until now. When I glanced at my husband, who was sleeping contently in bed, I noticed his mobile phone sticking out of his pocket. Could it be that he's hiding something from me? Such a suspicion crossed my mind. Before I knew it, I had my husband's mobile phone secretly in my hand. While he slept, I used his fingerprints to unlock it. Then, on the screen that opened, I saw a long conversation with someone named Lover. "Thanks to you, Hervey, I had a great time today. Thank you. When can we meet again? Leave your wife soon and be with me." In the photo folder, there were numerous pictures of Hervey with a woman, presumably Lover. Some of them were quite explicit, and I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. With my husband's mobile phone still in my hand, I rushed to the bathroom to catch my breath. Somehow, I managed to keep my composure, but it was too much for me to bear alone. Then I thought of Briella, my best friend from high school, who now lives abroad. She is very intelligent, and after studying abroad in college, she is now working overseas. When I dialed the international number, she answered after a few rings. "Hello? Briella? What should I do? I don't think I can handle this anymore. I cried to her, telling her this. What? Wait, Lizette, what's going on? My husband, Hervey, he's been cheating on me. Cheating? I explained the whole situation to Briella, about how after a year of marriage, his overtime and business trips suddenly increased, how he came home drunk, even though he said he was working late, and how I had seen evidence of his infidelity on his mobile phone. I explained sobbing, and Briella silently listened. When I had finished telling her everything, she spoke to me. Lizette, listen carefully. I know this is painful right now, but I think it's best to properly gather evidence of the affair for the future. Evidence? But that means considering divorce. Then what? Lizette, do you want to spend the rest of your life with a man who cheats on you? I don't know. I know that you care about your family, Lizette, but can someone who makes you miserable truly be called family? Briella. Her words woke me up. I realized that I had unconditionally believed everything my husband had said. It was strange, thinking back, how suddenly overtime and business trips had become so frequent. Out of fear of losing him, I had turned my eyes away from reality. With Briella's advice, I decided to start taking steps towards divorcing Hervey. First, I transferred all the evidence of his infidelity that was on his mobile phone to mine. Briella introduced me to a lawyer she knew, and I diligently gathered evidence, guided by the lawyer's advice. I followed my husband, regularly checked his mobile phone. Collecting evidence while juggling work and household chores was truly exhausting. I even cut back on sleep, so my body was on the brink, and I collapsed several times. After all that effort, within a few months, I had gathered a significant amount of evidence of infidelity. With all this, I should definitely be able to divorce him advantageously. Finally, all my hard work seemed to be paying off, but just when I thought that, I collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. I thought it was just exhaustion, but the examination revealed a certain illness. I had to be hospitalized immediately. I had gathered the evidence and it was just the right time, but still, there was nothing to be done about the illness. I called my husband to tell him about it. Hervey, can you talk for a moment? What? Didn't I tell you I'm on a business trip for a while starting today? Actually, I collapsed at work. I need to be hospitalized for a bit. Huh? So? What do you mean, so? Is that all you have to say? You're going to be in the hospital, right? You'll be safe there. By this time, my husband had lost interest in me and was meeting with his lover almost every day. His treatment of me had become so careless that I even wondered if he was trying to get caught. Naturally, my feelings for him had completely cooled off. I was fed up with his complete lack of concern, and I couldn't help but ask, "You're thinking it's lucky that I'm hospitalized, aren't you?" Huh? What are you talking about all of a sudden? That's a pain. But it's true, isn't it? Today, you're not going on a business trip. You're going on a vacation with your lover. What? How did you find out about that? It's pretty obvious. Did you actually think you were hiding it? I thought he would deny it more, but my husband surprisingly admitted to the affair quite easily. Perhaps thinking he was already caught, he suddenly became defiant. Yeah, that's right. I am having an affair. You got a problem with that? Ugh. How can you be so brazen? After all this time, you've been deceiving me. It's your fault for being fooled, right? And why don't you just stay in the hospital forever? What are you talking about? I don't need a sick wife. I've been doing you a favor by staying married to you this long, so be grateful. In that moment, all my feelings turned into anger towards my husband. Be grateful? This is not the married life I wanted. He's making a fool of me. I'll make him regret this. I will never forgive you, Hervey. Holding back the urge to scream at him, I calmly tell my husband. Then he responds with propagation. Feel free to do as you wish. You can't divorce me anyway. Why do you think that? Because it's true, right? I'm the only family you have. If you lose me now, you'll be all alone again. Are you okay with that? Huh. Family. Huh. Just behave and we'll remain a family. That's the deal. I'm off to enjoy a trip with my girlfriend. You have fun in the hospital too. With that, he callously hung up the phone. At that moment, a sweet, syrupy woman's voice could be heard through the phone, saying, "Are you done yet?" Perhaps he doesn't feel the need to hide it anymore. Even if his affair is exposed, he thinks I can't move forward with a divorce. Don't underestimate me. If he thinks that just by using the word family, he can fool me so easily, he's sorely mistaken. If you're feeling that way, just know that I have thoughts of my own. As I was filled with determination, I received a call from Briella, perfectly timed. I quickly explained the content of the previous conversation. So, that's the situation. Hervey seems to think I can't divorce him. What? Seriously? How much more can he belittle you? I know, right? Well, I'm planning on getting a divorce. The biggest problem is what to do after the divorce. What do you mean? You see, and Briella probably knows this too, the house I'm living in now is mine. So even if I divorce him, I don't know if he'll leave right away, and since he knows the address, he might come back. I see. After a moment of thought, Briella excitedly exclaimed, "That's it! Hey Lizette, I have a great idea." Huh? I opened my eyes wide at the idea that came out of her mouth. But now, I don't have time to hesitate. I accepted her proposal and decided to proceed with the plan simultaneously with the hospitalization. A few days later, today is the day Hervey comes back from his trip with his lover. I, who had already been discharged from the hospital, had been eagerly awaiting his reaction. As expected, I got a call from Hervey in the afternoon. Hello? When I calmly answered the phone, he suddenly raised his voice in anger. Hey, you! What's going on here? What do you mean, what's going on? Inside the house, everything is gone except for my personal belongings, isn't it? Yes, that's right. Is there a problem with that? What? Where did you take all the furniture and appliances? You didn't sell them to get back at me, did you? Of course not, silly. I moved them to my new place. What? A new place? The word new place seemed to surprise him quite a bit. I guess the idea of me moving out on my own never crossed his mind. Hervey continued to blame me in a strong tone. Don't mess with me! You can't just move out on your own! We need to talk first. Tell me the address. Huh? No thanks. What do you mean? Are you saying it's fine if I don't come back? Yes, it's fine. What? I don't want to see you anymore, so I moved out, quietly. Oh, by the way, I've already sold the house. Please move your stuff out by the end of the month. What are you saying? You still don't get it? I'm saying let's get divorced. Finally, I laid the divorce on him. My husband seemed quite confused, repeating words I couldn't quite make out over the phone. Whether it was my bringing up the divorce that bothered him, he eventually started lecturing me in an arrogant tone. Do you really think it's okay to say that? Divorce means our family will be gone, you know? I know, but we haven't been a family for a while now, have we? Don't mess with me. I've always been with you as a family, as a husband. If you insist on divorce, then pay me compensation. Huh? Compensation? Do you even know where you stand? If anyone's paying compensation, it's actually you, okay? Huh? It's not huh. Just so you know, I have more than enough evidence of your affairs. Of course, I'll demand as much compensation as possible from your lover, too. My husband's voice suddenly became very small over the phone, and I could feel his panic. Realizing that he was the one who would be demanded to pay compensation, he quickly changed his attitude and began to plead. Wait, please, I was wrong. Yes? I'll break up with her. I'll start over with you as husband and wife. So, please, just spare me the compensation. My husband is pitifully begging, repeatedly saying, "Forgive me." With each plea, my feelings for him cooled further, eventually turning into irritation. As if to completely sever my attachment to my husband, I shouted out loud, "Enough! You've cheated on me over and over, making a fool of me, and now you say forgive me? Don't kid yourself. I no longer think of you as family. You're the worst kind of man, cheating on your sick wife. I refuse you from my end." Oh, Lizette, please listen to me. You don't want to be alone either, do you? I don't care about your story. Your excuses are worthless. I won't cling to you anymore. I don't need a family like you. Just go to hell with your mistress. I hung up the phone unilaterally and blocked his contact. Afterward, I left all dealings with him to the lawyer I had previously hired. At first, my husband was reluctant to agree to a divorce, but frightened by the lawyer's words, divorce mediation and divorce trial, he finally agreed to divorce quietly. I continued to demand compensation in a lump sum from both him and his lover. Perhaps because he had told her, "It'll never be found out." His lover became furious upon being asked for compensation. She paid me the compensation and immediately ended her relationship with Hervey. Being his junior colleague at the company, the whole office was abuzz with talk of my ex-husband's affair. He couldn't stand it any longer, so he voluntarily resigned from the company. Only debts remained for Hervey. Even when he asked his parents for assistance, they coldly cut ties with him. Now he can't find a new full-time job, and he's desperately juggling several part-time jobs, struggling to pay off his debts every day. On the other hand, I've turned over a new leaf and started a new life. Since my ex-husband knew about the cafe where I used to work, I requested a transfer and am now working at a different location. I can't thank Briella enough for suggesting this to me. She'll be returning home temporarily soon, so I plan to thank her in person then. I'm done being trapped by the word family. From now on, I want to cherish the people who care for me, just as they cherish me.
My name is Charlotte. I married Mickey when I was 25 after meeting him at a party. Mickey had always said, "You can be a stay-at-home wife if you want." And indeed, we could live comfortably on Mickey's income alone. But I loved my job, and I continued to work at the company that had taken care of me since I graduated from high school. However, in the second year of our marriage, I decided to quit my job. The trigger was a phone call from father-in-law telling me that mother-in-law had collapsed. I loved my gentle and kind mother-in-law. When I rushed to mother-in-law's side alone, as Mickey couldn't make it due to work, mother-in-law greeted me with a weak smile, connected to many tubes. Mother-in-law was not in immediate danger, but her collapse had left her in need of care. We had to decide who would take care of mother-in-law before she was discharged. I thought Angelina, my unmarried sister-in-law who lived with her parents, would do it, but she firmly refused. Angelina, who mainly works from home, told the hospitalized mother-in-law, "I'm not playing around at home, so I can't take care of Mom. Get it together." Mother-in-law smiled in a troubled way, but I was honestly taken aback by how someone could say such a thing when their own mother was suffering. Then Angelina, who didn't want to take care of mother-in-law, called Mickey and asked me for a meeting. At the in-laws' house, a meeting was held with father-in-law, Angelina, and us, the married couple, to discuss who will take care of mother-in-law. I really can't take care of Mom.
What should I do about the housework now that my wife has collapsed so soon?
Angelina kept saying, "Impossible." And father-in-law, who had left all the housework to mother-in-law, seemed to have no intention of taking care of her. Mickey tried to persuade Angelina to take care of mother-in-law, but she firmly refused. The conclusion of this family meeting seemed predetermined. Angelina and father-in-law were indirectly telling me to take care of mother-in-law. I had some attachment to the job I had continued since graduating from high school. But I didn't want to see any more of this meeting, where they were pushing the care of mother-in-law, who had been so kind to me since I married Mickey, onto each other. So I made up my mind and said, I understand. I'll quit my job and take care of mother-in-law. We'll be living together from now on, so please treat me well. Father-in-law said, Thank you, Charlotte, and thanked me happily. But Angelina spat out, Of course. Mickey asked me, Are you sure? If it's too much, we can hire a professional to take care of Mom. But I nodded. It's okay. I really owed a lot to mother-in-law. Hiring a professional would cost money, and mother-in-law might feel hesitant. I thought it would be better for mother-in-law to be taken care of by me, a family member, even though I was her daughter-in-law. I knew that father-in-law was a vague person who wanted to avoid trouble, and Angelina had a mean-spirited personality. I was anxious about having to live with these two from now on, but I made up my mind, quit my job, and started living with my in-laws. That life was more challenging than I had imagined. Mother-in-law's body had become uncooperative, so she initially lamented needing care even to go to the bathroom. She often said, I'm sorry, to me for having to take care of her, and it was painful to see mother-in-law like that. And above all, Angelina's bullying of me as the daughter-in-law took a mental toll. My family didn't have money, and I had been working since high school without going to college, but Angelina often mocked my education. While eating the food I made and talking to father-in-law about work, she would suddenly say, Oh, sorry, Charlotte. This conversation might be too difficult for a high school graduate. I shouldn't have talked about something you can't understand. Or she would come to me, who is caring for mother-in-law, and deliberately say, You're just a lowly high school graduate daughter-in-law, so you have to at least take care of Mom. Mother-in-law, with her body that couldn't move freely, would scold Angelina, saying, Don't say such things to Charlotte. Angelina seemed to hate being scolded by mother-in-law. So after being sternly told by mother-in-law, she began to badmouth me when mother-in-law wasn't around. I have a respectable job at home, so it's only natural for a lowly high school graduate like Charlotte to do the housework. So sometimes make food that tastes good. It's always so bad. When Angelina, who did no housework, said this to me while I was cooking, I even thought about not serving her meal, but I held back. When she found an unclean spot, she would say loudly, Wow, a trashy daughter-in-law. Can't tell the difference between trash. There's so much garbage piled up. But I held back then, too. I didn't want it to become known that Angelina and I were not getting along, as it would be a mental burden on mother-in-law. I endured and lied to mother-in-law, who would ask, Is she not being mean to you? With a smile saying, I'm fine. Mickey knew Angelina's personality and often worried about me. Are you not pushing yourself too hard? He would ask, and I would lie to him too, saying, I'm fine. I didn't want to burden Mickey, who was working hard in a company with a strict boss with family problems. Father-in-law acted as if he couldn't hear how much I was being insulted. To father-in-law, who just wanted someone to do the housework in place of mother-in-law, it probably didn't matter what was said to me. For mother-in-law? For Mickey? Inspiring myself with these thoughts, I devoted myself to mother-in-law for a year. Then, mother-in-law suddenly passed away, peacefully in her sleep. Mama died because you didn't take proper care of her. Such a useless, trashy daughter-in-law. Angelina said this to me crying, as I stood in shock in front of the deceased mother-in-law. I had done my best to take care of mother-in-law, but the thought that mother-in-law might have died because of my lack of care was swirling in my head. During mother-in-law's funeral service, I was in a daze, like an empty shell the whole time. Mickey was considerate, but Angelina kept saying to me so Mickey couldn't hear, You're really useless. With mother-in-law's funeral service over, there was no reason for me to continue living with my in-laws. As I stood alone in my suit, looking at my mother-in-law's empty bed. Father-in-law pleaded with me.
Please, Charlotte, my wife has passed away, but won't you continue to live with us?
Father-in-law is someone who can't do any housework at all. I couldn't imagine Angelina doing housework either. Father-in-law probably wanted me to continue living with them as a housekeeper. I was astonished by this, but more than anything, I was appalled that father-in-law would plead for such a thing right after mother-in-law's funeral service had ended. I thought this man really only thinks about himself, but I didn't give an answer on the spot. I need to consult with Mickey, so I can't decide on my own. Father-in-law clung to me, saying,
Please, I beg you.
But I only replied that I would consult with Mickey, and the conversation ended in a stalemate.
Charlotte, Mom has passed away. There's no need to live together anymore. Let's move out, live just the two of us. You've been through a lot, haven't you?
A few days after mother-in-law's funeral service, Mickey said this to me. I also wanted to end the cohabitation. Now that mother-in-law had passed away, there was no reason to live with Angelina, who would speak ill of me, and father-in-law, who would treat me as a housekeeper. Thanking Mickey for his consideration, we, as a couple, decided to leave my in-laws' house. But that plan was completely crushed by Angelina. What? I won't allow you to leave. Saying such a thing the moment Mom is gone is too heartless. When Mickey and I told Angelina and father-in-law that we were thinking of leaving, Angelina became furious like a raging fire.
It's not heartless. Charlotte took really good care of Mom. She deserves to be freed now.
A high school graduate like her finding a job now is impossible. If she can't be useful to society, she should at least do housework in this house and be of some use to Dad and me.
Charlotte was excellent at her job. You have no right to say that to her.
Anyway, neither Mickey nor Charlotte has any intention of leaving this house. Because Angelina stormed out of the room after saying this, the discussion was forcibly ended. But Mickey said,
We can just leave on our own,
and started looking for a place. I also began preparing for the move, looking for properties while doing housework so as not to be complained about by Angelina, and reducing our belongings. But Angelina was watching me, and when I was organizing my belongings, she would scatter them, shouting, "Heartless person! I'll never let you leave this house." Or when I was making phone calls to look for property, she would snatch my mobile phone and say to the real estate agent, "Please pretend that conversation never happened." She started to act completely out of control. Mickey would get angry at Angelina every time, but she would always yell back at him, "Your wife is the worst. You have no eye for women." And nothing would improve. One day during dinner, when Mickey and I were both at our wits' end, Angelina, in a rare good mood, called out to me, "Charlotte, tomorrow my fiancé is coming to our house. I know you're a useless piece of trash, but try to use your brainless head and read the room, okay?" I was used to being berated at the dinner table when Mickey wasn't around, but I was surprised by the word fiancé that came out of Angelina's mouth. I know it's really rude, but I was shocked to think there's a man in the world who would want to marry someone like her. After being told repeatedly during dinner to be a good girl, I responded vaguely and ended the day doing housework as usual. And then the next day, Angelina, dressed more stylishly than I had ever seen her, brought her fiancé Randolph. Angelina's fiancé was wearing a well-fitted suit, was polite, and seemed intelligent. Why would such a seemingly decent person want to marry Angelina? I thought, again rudely, as I prepared drinks and headed to the living room where father-in-law, Angelina, and Randolph were. Then I heard Angelina's cajoling voice coming from the living room. "That spaced-out girl earlier is Mickey's wife. She really can't do anything. I do all the housework in our house, and I worked hard to take care of our deceased mom. I think Mom could have lived longer if that girl hadn't stressed her out." I froze in the front of the living room. I felt as if I had been struck from behind by Angelina's words. The shock woke me up. Because I didn't want to burden Mickey or mother-in-law, I had been holding back. But now, it felt like all those feelings were flooding out. I did all the housework. I worked hard to take care of mother-in-law. All of it was me. Angelina never helped me with anything. I opened the living room door, quietly served the drinks, and greeted Randolph with a smile. Hello, as you were introduced. I'm the high school graduate, bottom of the barrel, useless trash. Nice to meet you. Angelina let out a panicked shout, but I kept talking smoothly. Angelina really guides me well. She evaluates every meal I make as tasteless, and when I'm cleaning, she comes to laugh, saying that the trash is cleaning up trash. She often scolded me for my caregiving, saying that mother-in-law died early because of my incompetence. You? What are you saying? Pointing at Angelina, who was furious like a demon and smiling. See, she's guiding me like that. Angelina pulled my hair and yelled, "Stop it!" Randolph must have never seen her like this before. He looked confused, saying, What? And I felt sorry for him. But this should make him reconsider marrying Angelina. I felt like I had saved him, so I excused myself in mind for causing this chaos. Well then, the trash will leave now. I left the in-laws' house with only my valuables. Father-in-law, wanting to avoid trouble, just sat silently during my counterattack. Seeing Angelina's furious rage, and Randolph almost crying as he tried to calm her down, was refreshing. I left the in-laws' house and took refuge in my parents' home. When I explained the situation to my parents, they were appalled by Angelina's behavior and father-in-law's indifference and told me, From now on, do as you please, Charlotte. While enjoying a relaxing time at home for the first time in a while, Mickey came to my parents' house at night. Mickey had come home to be yelled at by Angelina. It's all your wife's fault. Giving up on getting a coherent story from the furious Angelina, Mickey somehow learned from father-in-law that I had left and came to me, even though he was tired after work.
We should have moved out forcibly sooner. I knew that my sister and father had been tormenting Charlotte all this time, and I'm sorry I couldn't help. From now on, I'll always protect Charlotte. So, if you're okay with me, I want you to stay with me as my wife forever.
Mickey, you've always tried to protect me, haven't you? I'm sorry for ruining Angela's engagement. Even Angelina, as she is Mickey's blood-related sibling. Mickey hugged me as I apologized and repeatedly told me,
Charlotte, you did nothing wrong.
I stayed at my parents' house for a while, and Mickey moved my belongings. Afterwards, Mickey and I found a nice property, moved there, and were able to start a peaceful life. We received calls from Angelina and father-in-law every day, but we blocked them. According to Mickey, Angelina's engagement was called off. Randolph was taken aback by the overly excited Angelina and said,
I need to think about marriage.
And then became unreachable. Angelina was crying and yelling at Mickey. It's your wife's fault. But Mickey calmly replied,
Charlotte just told the truth.
Father-in-law seemed desperate after losing his housekeeper, his daughter-in-law. He asked Mickey,
Can you bring Charlotte back?
But Mickey said,
I'm cutting ties with this house,
and left the in-laws' house. As for me, I found out I was pregnant a few months after leaving the in-laws' house. When I told Mickey, he was thrilled, and he changed jobs from the strict company where he was working, saying,
I can't raise our child together with my current job.
Mickey decided to change jobs. I believe he's trying to keep the promise he made when he came to pick me up at my parents' house, that he would protect Charlotte. Since we've cut off contact with the in-laws, we haven't reported that we're having a child. I think there's no need to report it, as I'm sure that even if Angelina and father-in-law knew I was having a child, their attitudes wouldn't change. Now that my belly has grown, Mickey and I are looking forward to the birth of our child and living happily day by day.
After finalizing the divorce, I started living with my daughter. But about 6 months in, something happened. I was enjoying a day off with my daughter at home when I got a sudden call from Mom. "Hello, Nicole? Listen, Turns out my ex-husband Freddie and my former mother-in-law Jessie had shown up unannounced at my parents' house and let themselves in. I quickly got ready and headed to my parents' house. Upon arrival, Freddie and Jessie were sitting arm in arm on the living room couch, waiting for me. I had no idea why they were there. "Why did you show up at my parents' house like this?" When I asked, Freddie dropped a bombshell.
"I want the money I lent you back."
My name is Nicole, a 40-year-old working woman. I was married to Freddie for 14 years. My daughter Amy was born around the time we got married, so she's already in 8th grade. The three of us were living a very happy life together, and I thought we would continue to build a warm family. I met Freddie at a party and was immediately drawn to his friendly, kind, and cheerful personality. It seems Freddie was also quite fond of me, as we spent the entire party talking to each other. We exchanged contact information and started dating, eventually leading to marriage a year later after Freddie proposed. I was truly happy when we decided to get married, as I loved Freddie dearly. In high school, I had a tight-knit group of 4 friends. We'd always get together whenever something big happened in our lives. When I got engaged, everyone celebrated as if it was their own big day. They all came to my wedding, and I remember them saying they hoped to get married soon too. And just like that, one by one, everyone got married. Our little friend group turned into a circle of married women. We joke about how our get-togethers had matured overnight. Then I had a baby, and soon enough, everyone else did too. Our group quickly became a circle of mom friends. It felt like we were journeying through life together, and I thought we'd always be close like this. I've been enjoying my life both as a wife and a mom, but being a career woman has been especially fulfilling. After graduating from college, I was assigned to a large company's planning and development department. My days are busy, but my work is rewarding and always a learning experience. According to my friends, I appear to be as tough as nails, but I wouldn't mind actually being that tireless. Supporting and comforting me through my work center life are Freddie and Amy. I'm so tired today.
"Oh, Mom, you worked hard today."
Little Amy would greet me with a big hug and a smile when I came home from work. Just holding Amy wipes away the day's fatigue.
"Nicole, dinner's ready."
And then there's Freddie, another source of comfort for me. Freddie quit his full-time job to support my career and started working part-time when Amy was born. He even picked her up from school and took on jobs at a local cafe. When I'd get home, a warm meal was always waiting for me, prepared by Freddie. After a tiring day at work, coming home to a warm meal was truly a joy. We'd unwind with Freddie's cooking, tuck Amy into bed, and talk about our day. Life was fulfilling, both professionally and personally. This was possible because Freddie and Amy were understanding of my work. But I started to take their kindness for granted and became more engrossed in my job. As I began to deliver results at work, I got promoted, and earned a title. That led to more overtime, and I started coming home later and later. And when I'd finally get home, Amy was often already asleep. So Freddie continued to take on more shifts at the cafe, fully engrossed in his work too.
Lately, I've been really into trying coffee from various specialty stores. Bought some beans today as well. I also picked up some cakes from a new bakery, so let's have them with coffee.
Freddie was so passionate about coffee. He was constantly learning about roasting, different beans, and brewing methods, and practicing them all at his workplace. And because of that, we always had amazing coffee at home. Both Freddie and Amy were so understanding and indulging of my work-centric life that I failed to notice that it was straining our family dynamic. I only realized this when Amy came to me with a concern. "What's up?"
Well, the other day when I was hanging out downtown with my school friends, I saw Dad with another woman.
"What?"
It's not like they were holding hands or anything, but they seemed close. Plus, I've noticed for the last year or so, Dad's on the phone a lot right before you come home, Mom. And there are times he's so into his phone, he doesn't even hear me when I talk to him. He looks happy while he's staring at his phone screen. At first, I thought he was texting you, or maybe you were calling him while you were at work. But after what happened recently, I can't help but wonder if he's talking to that woman.
Amy looked really sad as she said this. Now that she was in middle school, it made sense she'd be sensitive to these kinds of things and find them deeply upsetting. I was also undeniably shocked. I had always believed that Freddie was faithful and put me and Amy first. If he's been having an affair, that would be incredibly heartbreaking. I'm so sorry, Amy. I've been so focused on work and didn't realize what you were going through.
No, don't apologize. I think it's awesome how hard you work, Mom. You don't have to feel sorry about that.
I felt so grateful when Amy spoke those kind words. Thank you, Amy. I'll look into it. And if I find out Jed is cheating, I think I'll file for divorce. Is that okay with you? Amy nodded in agreement when I asked.
Yeah, it would feel gross just being around Dad if he's cheating.
After hearing Amy say that, I felt ashamed for not paying more attention to my family. I knew I had to dig deeper into this for Amy's sake. I immediately contacted a private investigator to look into Freddie's possible affair. And the results were shocking. Freddie was, indeed, having an affair, just like Amy said. They even had photographic evidence. But what was really shocking was who he was having an affair with. It was none other than Margareta, a close friend and classmate from my high school days. I was more shocked by that than by Freddie's infidelity. I felt betrayed by a friend I had always thought was trustworthy and close. Margareta was a housewife and the last among my close friends to get married. Her child is only about 5 years old. Despite that, she was having an affair with my Freddie. When I got the evidence, I was so shocked I couldn't move for a while. If I hadn't been in my own room, Amy or Freddie might have seen me, and that would have been a disaster. I couldn't show these pictures to Amy, and it was too early to confront Freddie. I took a deep breath to calm myself. And then I got a message that one of my good friends had switched jobs. I thought it would be a good opportunity, so I suggested we all get together. Margareta would have never suspected anything if I hadn't been the one to propose the gathering. I succeeded in setting up a gathering of friends just like I planned. And 3 weeks later, I was face to face with Margareta, Freddie's affair partner. During that time, I quickly hired a lawyer and started preparing for divorce. I also told Amy about what I found out and that I'm planning to divorce him. So we spent our days off looking for a new place to live. And before I knew it, the day of the gathering with close friends arrived. First, we chatted about new jobs with friends who had recently switched careers, and everyone caught up on their latest news. Margareta was acting completely normal, seemingly unaware that I knew. It must be nice to have job changes and stuff to talk about. I'm a housewife, so my life is pretty much the same every day. Margareta responds just like that. Well, you have a husband who brings in plenty of money, so you don't need to work. That's not bad, right? Another friend chimes in. I am grateful for that, but yeah, sometimes I do feel a bit bored. Conversations had flowed long enough. It was time. So, is that why you had an affair with someone else's Freddie? What? My comment stunned not just Margareta, but everyone else too. Wait, Nicole, what are you talking about? Margareta turned pale and stayed silent as another friend questioned me. Margareta's been having an affair with my Freddie. What? No way! You're joking, right? I can't believe Margareta would do that. Other friends tried to defend Margareta. Seizing the chance, Margareta joins in. What? Nicole, what are you talking about? Are you sure you didn't mistake me for someone else? Of course, she'd play the innocent card. Is that so? Well, let's make sure everyone else sees it too. With that, I pulled out photos from my bag. The friends were speechless at the photos I laid out on the table. No way! Margareta, why would you? Margareta herself probably never imagined I'd have evidence in the form of pictures. She covered her open mouth with her hand, unable to hide her shock. I was genuinely devastated. Why would you have an affair with my Freddie? Margareta seemed to realize she couldn't escape the situation. I'm sorry, I actually started going to the cafe where Nicole's husband works and found out that he was there. My husband makes good money, but since we got married, he hasn't really been attentive. So I was lonely. Margareta burst into tears. But being lonely isn't an excuse for an affair, especially not with my husband Freddie. I continued the conversation, not swayed by Margareta's tears. Sorry to have to say this in front of everyone, but I'll be demanding compensation from you, Margareta. I also dropped off the paperwork detailing this at your house. Your husband is probably going through it right now. What? Why would you do something so cruel? Cruel? Who's the one cheating despite being married and having kids? You need to face the consequences. Hearing this, Margareta's face turned ashen. We can't really trust Margareta anymore. The rest of us left the restaurant, leaving Margareta behind. I've had my revenge on Margareta, so Freddie's next. He's probably heard from Margareta by now. Sure enough, he was already tipped off by Margareta when I got home.
Hey, what's going on?
What do you mean?
I got a message from Margareta.
About the affair, perhaps?
Why would you expose us like this?
You're the worst, you know that? Pretending to be a good husband while cheating behind my back.
Margareta has a family too. Why would you expose her to her husband?
You're saying that too? People who cheat must think alike. If you've done something wrong, you should be punished. So I'm divorcing you and demanding alimony and child support. He couldn't deny it. I had all the evidence. Mike agreed to the divorce, but wasn't happy about the financial part. Once I told him I was ready to take this to court with a top-notch lawyer, he finally agreed to pay. So I divorced Freddie and sold the house we were living in. Amy and I moved into a new condo. I took legal action against Freddie and Margareta, and thanks to my lawyer, I got $30,000 from each of them. Of course, I also demanded child support from Freddie. After the divorce was settled, life with Amy started to get into a new rhythm. Sure, it took a toll on me mentally, but slowly the wound started to heal. Then, about 6 months later, something happened. I was enjoying a day off with Amy when I suddenly got a call from Mom. What she told me was shocking. Freddie and my former mother-in-law Jessie had showed up unannounced at my parents' home and even let themselves in. Dad happened to be out at the time. That's why Mom had called me urgently. I quickly got ready and headed over. When I arrived, Freddie and Jessie were sitting on the living room couch, arms crossed, waiting for me. I had no idea why they were there. Why are you here at my parents' house all of a sudden? When I asked that, Freddie dropped a bombshell.
I want you to pay me back the money I lent you.
What? I've never borrowed money from you.
I spent $1,500 on our wedding. The wedding is all about the bride, so that's like lending it to you. Divorcing me is basically fraud. I'd like to sue you for marriage fraud, but if you pay back the $1,500, we can settle this.
Freddie was making an outrageous demand. Jessie also said, "Pay up already." Come to think of it, Freddie had become a full-time employee at the cafe he was working at after the divorce. I'm pretty sure the cafe didn't pay much. He must be asking for money so aggressively because he's broke. Just so you know, the wedding was about both of us, and I contribute more to our daily living costs. If you look at the grand total, $1,500 seems like pocket change to what I'm providing. So stop making absurd demands that complicate things. Even after saying this to drive them away, the two didn't budge an inch. Then Dad came home. It looked like Dad had gotten a call from Mom and rushed back.
What the heck are you two doing here?
Freddie explained the same thing to Dad, who listened in silence. But you could tell he was past angry and more into disbelief at the ridiculous demands.
In the first place, you're the one at fault for having an affair. If you're going to make such an unreasonable request, leave now.
After Dad said this, Freddie made a heartfelt apology.
Please, Nicole, lend me the money. It's not just from you. Margareta's husband is also asking for compensation, and it's really tight. $1,500. No, even $10,000 will do.
Asking for money even now? Is he out of his mind? I simply said, no, go home. But Jessie was like, get real. You also have a responsibility for the family not working out. And insisted we had an obligation to lend money. A situation with no resolution in sight. Then Dad said,
"Fine, I'll get it ready now. Just wait."
and went into another room. Wait a minute, Dad, what are you doing? As I hurriedly went after him, Dad wore a gleeful smile.
Hey, we've got plenty of money, so why not share some with them, right? Haha.
I got the gist when I saw Dad open the closet and pull something out. Ah, this is going to be good. Dad put a stack of bills in an envelope and handed it to Freddie. Freddie and Jessie looked satisfied and left. As soon as they were out, we locked the door and called the cops. The two of them seemed to have checked the envelope as soon as they stepped outside. They immediately came back and started banging on our front door.
What's the deal? This is play money. We don't want this fake stuff.
Freddie shouts that out, fuming with anger. Laughing, I said through the front door to Freddie and the others, "Since I have so much money, I thought I'd share some with you." Then Freddie said,
"Don't mess with me,"
and banged on the front door even harder. The noise sounded like he was kicking the door. Little did they know they were digging themselves into a deeper hole. When the police arrived, Freddie and Jessie were apparently kicking the front door, and they were arrested on the spot. The neighbors had gathered too, and it seems a lot of people saw Freddie and Jessie get arrested. In the end, instead of getting any money, Freddie ended up having to pay fines for his arrest and compensation for damaging the front door. What's worse, among the people who witnessed Freddie's arrest was a regular customer of the cafe where he worked. The news spread quickly, and Freddie was reportedly fired. Now he's jobless, moved back home, and his parents-in-law are covering the compensation and child support. As for us, I've secured a restraining order against my ex-family. If anything happens, one call and help will be there in a flash. And now, Amy and I continue to share our happy days as usual. I plan on doing well at my job and watching over Amy as she grows.